This is an ongoing investigation. This is a search warrant that has been provided to the missing person unit and that is in the process of being executed.
Tonight, an update from Winnipeg Police on a nearly 3-year-old missing persons case.
Obviously today is an exciting day and looking forward to seeing obviously the turnout. Today is obviously about me and what I've done.
A hero's welcome in the largest First Nation in Canada for a Stanley Cup champion.
We had some hand games, some double ball and some hoop stick and stuff like that. So it was a really good experience.
And Indigenous culture and sport are on display at the annual K-Days Festival in Edmonton. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Chris Nachkate. Thank you for watching. A date has been set for sentencing for a serial killer who targeted Indigenous women in Winnipeg. Jeremy Skitzki will be sentenced on Wednesday, August 28th at 10 a.m. He was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder earlier this month. Skitzki admitted to police in 2022 that he strangled and drowned Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman in his apartment. Skitzki pleaded not criminally responsible due to mental disorder. Chief Justice Joyal was not convinced. On July 11th, he ruled the killings were intentional and racially motivated. Joyal said in his 190-page written decision this week that this case is, quote, emblematic of much of what is associated with the tragedies that underlie the grim reality of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada, unquote. The later sentencing date was chosen so family and community members would have time to prepare victim impact statements. Today marks 2 years since Pope Francis apologized to Indigenous people at Musquecheese in Alberta for the Catholic Church's role in residential schools. In a letter to all Catholics, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops is calling for the continuation of work with Indigenous peoples on justice, healing, and reconciliation. During the visit, the Catholic Bishops of Canada pledged $30 million for healing and reconciliation projects identified by Indigenous people and overseen by the Indigenous Reconciliation Fund, or IRF for short. The IRF has raised more than $15 million and approved 166 projects. The Bishops of Canada will help to make their records available to Indigenous researchers and communities, including mission, sacramental, and burial documents. Discussions with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people on the doctrine of discovery will continue, and ongoing engagement with the Canadian government on Indigenous artifacts in Vatican museums. A sentencing hearing is underway in Toronto for disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard. Here he is being taken away in court this morning. Nygard has been in custody for over 2 years now. Last fall, he was convicted on 4 counts of sexual assault. One of the victims said the actions of Nygard have tainted her life in a debilitating way. Several of the victims also talked about how difficult coming forward has been, one saying that testifying in court was a horrendous an experience as the assault was. Nygard is still facing other charges in Manitoba, Quebec, and the US. The Winnipeg Police Service provided an update but gave very few details today about a 2.5-year missing persons case involving 28-year-old Cody Harper. Harper was last seen in Winnipeg's Elmwood neighborhood on October 13th, 2021. He was reported missing on November 1st of that year. At a press conference Wednesday, police announced the Missing Persons and Forensic Services Unit were executing a search warrant at the 200 block of Selkirk Avenue, linked to evidence of Harper's disappearance. An officer with a shovel could be seen entering the yard. RCMP is also assisting the Winnipeg Police by providing some of its equipment at the house. Constable Claude Chansey would not give any further information aside from there being no threat to public safety.
Can you expand at all? Like what led you to this building?
No, I mean, this is an ongoing investigation. I'm not at liberty to provide any more information than that we'll provide today. We do want to reassure the public that there's no concerns here for their own personal safety. This is an ongoing investigation. This is a search warrant that has been provided to the missing person unit, and that is in the process of being executed as we speak.
Can you say if the search for remains, for suspects?
No, it's a search. It's a search warrant for the property itself.
The president of the Manitoba Métis Federation was a fish out of water last month when he was ticketed by a conservation officer for fishing without a license. David Chartrand was casting his line in a lake near Cranberry Portage, 700 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg.
According to media reports, Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand was ticketed for fishing outside of a recognized Métis harvesting zone without a license. Chartrand says he wasn't breaking the law, he was exercising his right to fish. He says he believes the ticket was more of a warning and that the conservation officer was in the wrong. According to our research, the MMF's own map of recognized harvesting areas from 2018 shows the town of Cranberry Portage and some nearby lakes are on the border of where the MMF hopes to expand their harvesting rights. According to media reports, Deputy Natural Resources Minister Dene says there's currently no enforcement against Métis harvesters in the proposed expansion areas. The Manitoba Métis Federation did not respond to a request for an interview before airtime. The Manitoba government would not provide comment or any information. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Today is a big day for First Nations leadership in Manitoba. Up for grabs is the Grand Chief position with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, as well as the Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations. T.R. Wheatley brings us an update.
In a packed tent, Kathy Merrick was greeted with handshakes moments after she was re-elected as the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Merrick won on the first ballot with 35 votes, beating out her two male contenders from southern Manitoba. In total, 54 chiefs and proxies of the total 62 eligible First Nations voted. The midweek election happened during the political organization's annual general event that is taking place on the Waywassakapo Urban Reserve just outside Brandon. Chiefs spent much of the day sharing their top concerns, including getting first priority of lands and resources. This has been a hot potato, as many say there are a lot of outstanding treaty land entitlement issues, and the province of Manitoba just promised to return 100 acres of land to the Manitoba Métis Federation without any consultation from First Nations. The lack of nurses and doctors for First Nations communities is also another urgent matter. The Chiefs also want the drug crisis across the province tackled, as well as dealing with institutional racism within the health and justice systems.
So what are the candidates willing to do to combat this racism? Imagine what our people go through in those institutions.
Also up for grabs, who will represent Manitoba at the AFN in Ottawa. As of airtime, the results for this race were not known. The annual General Assembly is expected to wrap up Thursday evening. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The 54th Dene National Assembly begins today on Chief Dry Geese territory in the Yellowknives Dene community of Dene. The assembly was moved from the Chateau community of Fort Good Hope due to the wildfires there and an evacuation earlier this summer. Hundreds of leaders, elders, youth, and delegates gathered for the Dene Assembly's kickoff today. A new national chief will be elected on Thursday with a record 6 candidates on the ballot. The nominees include incumbent Gerald Antoine of the Decho, predecessor Chief Norman Yaki Yula of the Chateau, former Clecho Grand Chief George McKenzie, Catlo Deche First National Chief April Martel, and former Satu MLA Pauline China, and former Smith's Landing First Nations Chief Jerry Cheesy. Also on the agenda will be constitutional reform, water contamination, climate change, forestry management, education, health, and the RCMP. APTN News will have more coverage this week of the candidates forum and election. Two fires on moving in on Jasper National Park. One is just 5 kilometers away. About 25,000 people had to flee the approaching flames this week.
Our backcountry evacuation team is using helicopters, a couple of helicopters. I believe today they have 2 assigned to them. However, based on the fire behavior and our primary objective of keeping the main fire behavior away from the community of Jasper.
The other fire burning south of town is now 8 kilometers from Jasper. Many evacuees fled to British Columbia and are now staying in smaller communities. Some are living in their cars. BC officials are asking evacuees to turn back to Alberta. We're always looking for new story ideas or your feedback. Here's how you can reach us. If you have a story you want to share, don't be shy. Send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories you may have missed, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. And you can watch this newscast live anywhere, anytime on YouTube. Follow us at APTN News to join the conversation and stay up to date on all your Indigenous news. Coming up next after the break, Indigenous Service Minister Patty Hajdu made a stop in the Whitecap Dakota Nation in Saskatchewan today. We'll tell you why when we're back in about 3 minutes.
Everyone deserves a fair chance to succeed. If we invest in communities' prosperity,
Welcome back. Today, the Minister of Indigenous Services, Patty Hajdu, was in the Whitecap Dakota Nation in Saskatchewan to announce financial support for a new economic opportunity. Video journalist Rachel May was at the Dakota Dunes Resort for the announcement.
And so today, I'm so excited to be here to announce that Indigenous Services Canada will provide an additional $15 million to support this development of the Dakota Springs Spa to the Dakota Dunes Resort.
Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu joined Whitecap Dakota Nation Chief Darcy Bear to announce an expansion to Dakota Dunes. Hajdu said these types of investments are critical for the continued success of communities.
Everyone deserves a fair chance to succeed. If we invest in communities' prosperity, prosperity, then they're going to be able to better educate children, better ensure that they have the workforce.
Indigenous Services Canada contributed $2 million during planning and development. The feds will provide an additional $15 million, making their total contribution $17 million towards the $52 million project. Haidu noted the success of Dakota Dunes and said this project will benefit everyone, including residents outside of the Whitecap Dakota Nation.
So they're contributing to the overall economy of the region. It's a real way to think about things that's not built around, duty or sadness, but really about where do we want this country to go in the future.
The new thermal spa will be the first of its kind in Saskatchewan and the first in Canada to incorporate Indigenous artwork, Dakota history, and spiritual beliefs. Whitecap Dakota Nation Chief Darcy Bear said although the spa is a great addition to the resort, projects like this set First Nations up for success.
It is unique and it is First Nation driven, and there's nothing wrong with us as First Nations people taking our rightful place, being a part of the economy, and building profitable businesses.
The thermal spa is expected to open in 2026. Rachel May, APTN National News, Whitecap Dakota Nation.
Last week, the federal government apologized to 9 Dakota and Lakota nations for not including them in the treaty process and making them feel like second-class citizens in Canada. The Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation near Fort Qu'Appelle is not waiting around. They created a legal framework for their rights. CTV's Mick Fable explains.
The Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation is letting all industry entities know they have a duty to consult framework for all present and future projects. The announcement comes 1 week after the Government of Canada issued a formal statement and apology to Standing Buffalo over the treatment the nation received going back over a century. Sovereignty for the nation and control of their land is now top of mind.
That we're giving them notice that that our airspace, our land, the water, and the resources, we never surrendered that. So that is what we're saying. And we're in a position now to defend that litigation aggressively.
Mervyn Phillips, the lawyer working with Standing Buffalo, says the nation has been discriminated against in the past, but they are willing to build a future with others based on reconciliation.
They don't want to be regarded as second class in any way. They want the opportunity to take their rightful spot in the Canadian constitutional framework and the Canadian business community.
Redmond says the apology and the push for the duty to consult makes it a great time to be a part of the nation.
Times are moving fast now with our Aboriginal titles still intact, our inherent rights that we've always had, and our sovereignty is standing on its own, and we'd win. I'm confident that they win any litigation or judicial review that we initiate.
Chief Redmond says no nations have reached out to them just yet, but he wants them to know Standing Buffalo will work with others in achieving Indigenous sovereignty. Mick Fable, CTV News, Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation.
The largest First Nation in Canada got a glimpse of the Stanley Cup today as NHL superstar Brandon Montour, a member of their community, brought the trophy home. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
Despite the weather, the enthusiasm couldn't be dampened. Literally thousands showed up to welcome their hometown hero, Brandon Montour. Last month, he first held the Stanley Cup as a member of the Florida Panthers. Just before the celebrations kicked off at the Oswego Speedway, Montour took time to scrum with media.
Obviously today is an exciting day and looking forward to seeing, obviously, the turnout. But that's what it is. It's as many, I've told people, today is obviously about me and what I've done, but today is about everyone else to share that with, and I'm excited about that.
Families and supporters lined the 2-kilometer parade route as the Panthers defensemen displayed the massive cup. Robin Stonefish and Wendy Phillips made their way to Six Nations from Moraviantown and Peterborough, Ontario. It was a monumental moment for everyone.
For my son and for other people, there's Stanley Cups in different ways and different forms, and always encourage my kids, be the best at what what you're going to do. And I think that's what that symbolizes, and that's why I brought him here today.
At the end of the parade, fans made their way to the Six Nations Arena to continue the celebration. I'll have more on that on tomorrow's broadcast. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Six Nations of the Grand River.
Thank you, Annette. Coming up after the break, we'll take you to this year's K-Day festivities in Edmonton as well. An Indigenous artist got to take part in a residence program in a medieval castle in France. Tina House will have that story. Stick around, we're back in less than 3 minutes.
Being there in the castle, it was so unbelievable to be in a space where there's so much art and tapestries.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. With a spike in forest fires in British Columbia, Clarence Jones shared this sunset in the Gitxsan Nation as seen through a smoky sky. Thank you, Clarence, for sending that in. Please stay safe out there. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. On the east coast, St. John's 22, Charlottetown 25. Nain 20, Nuujjuaq 13. Quebec City 23, Val-d'Or 24. Toronto 25, Sault Ste. Marie 23. Timmins 25, Sioux Lookout 28. Churchill 18, Puckatawagan 24. Winnipeg 30, Barons River 30 as well. Swift Current 34, Yorkton 32. Larange 28, Uranium City 23. Northern AB, High Level 21, Peace River 16. Lethbridge 28, Medicine Hat 34. Tofino 19, Bella Coola 22. Smithers 22 there, Fort Nelson 23. Beaver Creek 25, Old Crow 29. Southern Northwest Territories, Yellowknife 22, Norman Wells 28. Colville Lake 24, Sachs Harbor 7. Chesterfield 21, Cambridge Bay 16, Iqaluit 8, and Arctic Bay 3. The Edmonton K-Days festivities are continuing in the Expo Centre this week. The event has been held since 1879. With carnival games, rides, and dozens of food options, the event draws thousands each year. The Indigenous Peoples experience is inside the Expo Centre. For 10 days, people can learn about Indigenous history, including the 60s Scoop, residential schools, missing and murdered Indigenous people. Stories from trappers and traditional games were also showcased. K-Days runs until Sunday.
There is a lot to experience here, and I think it all really comes together very well. We had Indigenous Day on the 22nd, and we had some traditional games going on over here by the teepees, and so we had some hand games, some double ball, and some hoop stick and stuff like that. So it was a really good experience for people coming in and learning about the culture.
This next story is about a well-known face here on APTN who has not only produced a number of shows for the network, but has now taken her creative talents to the other side of the world. APTN's Tina House has this story.
Tamara Bell is a well-known celebrity who has produced TV shows such as First Talk on APTN that features various guests discussing various subjects. But what many don't know is she is not only a recognizable talk show host and successful producer, but she is also an artist. She has just returned from an art residency in Champagne, France, where she lived in a castle with other artists from around the world.
Being there in the castle, it was so unbelievable to be in a space where there's so much art and tapestries and beauty and the structure that's like 500 years old. Your lived experience there is phenomenal because you really are free to just create, and having a world where you can do that is almost supernatural.
And create she did. These are few of the one-of-a-kind pieces she made while there. Bell meticulously hand paints colonization of Indigenous people and the effects of residential school and the many traumas that stemmed from that genocide.
It takes me forever to do a painting. I might sit on a painting for, in order to get the detail and the composition and the style. I use I paint on money. I use it as a canvas, and I almost feel divinely inspired sometimes through the creator to begin to create, and then when I see it, I begin working on it.
And in this series, Bell paints about her Haida traditional territory and the gold miners that landed on their shores, bringing smallpox blankets that nearly decimated their population.
I really fiercely moved into my work at a level that is I really want to be unapologetic and fearless with what I create, and I take off all barriers and I completely remove the viewer's experience, and I really focus in on the Indigenous lived experience of us over the past 500 years.
Tamara recently won second prize for painting at the Heard Museum in Arizona. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Thank you, Tina. And that's your evening national newscast for this Wednesday, July 24th. From everyone at APTN National News, Masicho Miigwech, hi hi. Thank you for watching. We'll leave you now with more sights and sounds of the Stanley Cup in Six Nations with Stanley Cup champion Brandon Montour.